Greetings everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'd like to share with you what I find to be the two most useful study tips that you can extract from all the learning style theories that are out there. The common concept among all learning style theories is that we have our preferences for how we learn things, and if we adjust our learning experience in accordance to these preferences, then we'll be learning with greater quality, faster, better. This whole premise does sound very logical and alluring. But you can probably already sense that there's a but coming up, so here it is. There's a whole plethora of learning style theories, and they all define these different learning styles in different ways. So all of a sudden it gets very tricky to identify what really works for you. And the second thing is that although there's a lot of research on the topic, there's still no hard evidence that matching what you learn with your preferred learning style yields any benefits to the quality with which you learn it, at least not in accordance to the scientific literature as of yet. However, there is a but against this but here, which is a very odd thing to imagine, but the important thing is that there is a way to enhance your learning experience, and different learning styles may be actually part of the answer. Now, as I mentioned, there are two major things that we can do to enhance the learning and studying experience and results that we get. However, in order to really tap into the potential of these two things, I think it's important to dissociate from the idea of styles and start looking at the different ways we interact with information as tools. And although you may have a preference for a given tool, this doesn't make it the right fit for each and every task. Well, the same thing is with learning. You have to match your learning strategy with the content of your studies. I know this may sound like the most obvious thing, yet sometimes it's so easy to forget the goal of our studies and lead ourselves astray from doing the most obvious thing, which may be actually the most useful one. But it may also be the case that we're just too comfortable with a particular way of studying and just rely on it even when it's not the most proper way of learning something. An example of that would be how we take notes whenever we are studying, and if you watch my video on how to summarize whenever you're learning, then you'd know that there are certain practices that are better than others. Yet we cling to certain ways of doing things just because we're used to them. And the same thing applies outside of an academic context as well. If you're into arts, drawing, maybe playing an instrument, even if you're a master in extracting and understanding information, unless you're practicing your craft, then you're wasting, if not all, at least a considerable amount of your time. So if I'm to sum this whole point up and make it as practical as possible, I would say, before you decide how to study given material, ask yourself, does this way of learning the content serve the purpose of my studies? And decide what you want to do from here. Now let's talk about the other thing that you can do, which is to engage the material that you'll be learning in as many different ways as possible. Now this may sound a little bit contradicting, having what we've been talking about up until this point, but it actually isn't, because it's no longer about the best way to learn something, it's beyond that. And this is all about approaching information in a multitude of ways. By studying something from different angles and with different means, you're inviting a greater part of your brain to take part in the process, which amounts to a greater total of your cognitive capacity to engage with the material. So here's a prime example of that from one of the articles that I used for this video. Derek Broll, who is the director of the Vanderbilt University Center, quite a mouthful, he shares a story about his trip to Ireland when he was a student. They were studying the history of Ireland, and before the trip they studied some very dry textbooks. Then they watched a movie related to the events from the books, which was cool. Then they also visited the places where the events took place so they can map everything together, and then they would also have a discussion with experts on the topic. So they have the books, they have the movie, they have visiting the places, they have the discussion, and by having these four unique interactions with everything, they get a much more deep and complete picture, memorable one of whatever it is that they're studying, in this case the history of Ireland. So this is just one example of learning something in a multitude of ways. But now having all the different learning style theories is cool because they can give you all sorts of suggestions on how you can do the same thing for your own studies, on top of the most important work you already did by following the first advice in this video. And that's it. These are the two tips from the learning style theory research that I think are most useful, that I find useful. They work for me. Hopefully they work now for you as well. There are also some hidden gems here and there. I will be exploring these in the future, so if you want, you can stick around, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, share the content with someone who would appreciate it. At any rate, at this point, I thank you sincerely for watching. Keep it bright. I'll see you all next time.